There's a certain kind of humiliation that doesn't arrive with a shout. It's quiet. It's the moment someone looks at you and silently decides you are no longer necessary. Isabel had worn that airline uniform for 22 years. Not because it was a glamorous job, but because it was her lifeline. It was the job that fed her son. It was the job that paid for his chemotherapy treatments when he was just 7 years old. It was the job that kept the lights on after his father walked out and never looked back. When passengers looked at her, they saw perfectly styled hair and heard calm, reassuring instructions during turbulence. What they never saw were the nights she spent crying in empty airport bathrooms, overwhelmed by loneliness and exhaustion. They didn't see her heart breaking as she missed her son's school plays, year after year. They never saw her at 2 a.m, poring over safety manuals until her eyes burned, determined to know every procedure inside and out. Every single stripe on the sleeve of her uniform was earned through sacrifice, paid for with tears and sleepless nights. That very morning, before she left for the airport, her son, now a young man, wrapped her in a tight hug. He looked her in the eyes and said, "You always make people feel so safe, Mum." A warm smile spread across her face. She treasured those words, holding them close to her heart, with no idea that their truth would be put to the ultimate test just a few hours later. When she arrived at the gate, ready for her flight, the new operations supervisor stopped her. He was young, ambitious, and his eyes held a cold, corporate glint. He didn't bother to pull her aside or speak in a low voice. Standing there in front of the boarding passengers, he announced, "We're restructuring the image of the airline." His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll be stepping down today, effective immediately." Passengers were filing onto the plane. Phones were already out, some people recording the boarding process, a common sight these days. In that crush of bodies and cameras, she was instructed to exit the aircraft, to walk the length of the aisle in front of everyone she was meant to serve, and leave. Her replacement, a much younger woman with a polished but inexperienced look, walked right past her without even making eye contact. As Isabel made that long, lonely walk down the aisle, a few passengers glanced up, their faces etched with confusion. Someone, perhaps thinking it was a retirement ceremony, even started to clap awkwardly. But the sound was swallowed by a deafening silence. Humiliation echoes so much louder than applause. She walked through the jet bridge, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if the weight of 22 years was collapsing on her in a matter of seconds. Finding a seat by a terminal window, she watched the plane she was supposed to be on pull away from the gate. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her career, her identity, her pride, all stripped away in a public spectacle. With no one to turn to, she closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. Her voice barely audible. "Archangel Michael of the divine light. If my dignity still matters, defend what I cannot." 17 minutes. That's all it took. 17 minutes after takeoff, the cockpit of Flight 482 sent out an urgent message. An electrical malfunction. Smoke was beginning to fill the cabin. The communication systems were failing, crackling with interference. The new, inexperienced crew began to panic. The captain, his voice tight with stress, called for a manual override sequence, a complex, archaic procedure that was so rarely used, it was barely practiced in modern simulations anymore. Silence from the cockpit. The junior crew didn't know it. On the ground, in the operations center, a chilling realization washed over the room. They frantically searched the records. Only one senior crew member currently employed by the airline had ever successfully performed that exact override sequence during a real-life emergency. Her name was Isabel, the very woman they had just publicly dismissed. The supervisor's face went pale, the color draining away as the full weight of his decision hit him. "Find her!" he yelled. "Find her now!" They ran, searching the terminal, their own panic rising. They found her right where they had left her, sitting by the window, not with anger in her eyes, but with a deep, visible wound. "We need you," the supervisor said, his voice strained. There was no apology in his tone yet, just raw desperation. Isabel stood up. Without a word, she walked back with them, not to the gate, but to the operations tower. They handed her a headset. Her hands, which had been trembling just moments before, were now perfectly still. Her voice, when she spoke, was not shaky. It was the voice of a professional who had been to hell and back. It was calm, precise, steady. Step by step, she guided the panicked crew through the complex override. She talked them through every switch, every lever, every confirmation code. Her voice was a lifeline, a beacon of calm in their storm of fear. On board the aircraft, her instructions cut through the chaos. The smoke began to clear. The electrical system stabilized. A wave of relief washed over the cockpit. The aircraft landed safely. By the time the shaken passengers disembarked, someone on the flight had already posted a recording online. But it wasn't the video of her humiliation. It was an audio recording from the cockpit's open communication channel. It was the sound of her voice, calm and authoritative, saving every single person on that plane. The clip went viral. It didn't spread with outrage or calls for boycotts. It spread with a profound sense of respect and awe. Reporters started calling. The airline, backed into a corner, quickly issued a formal public statement. But Isabel wasn't interested in revenge or lawsuits. She didn't give a single interview. Instead, she simply looked up towards the sky and whispered to herself, "Heaven doesn't expose you to destroy you. Heaven exposes you to redeem you." The supervisor did eventually offer a public, heartfelt apology, but the real lesson had already been written for the world to see. It's a powerful reminder: you can replace a title, you can change a uniform, you can dismiss a face because you think it's too old. But you can never, ever replace the earned wisdom that has been refined through the fires of life. When a higher power fights your battles, what was meant to be your humiliation becomes your platform for authority. Your moment of deepest shame is transformed into your greatest victory. If you believe that our dignity is never wasted and that our struggles build a strength that cannot be replaced, let me know in the comments by writing "Heaven Defends." Thank you for watching.